Hey, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Let's Play, well, not Let's Play, Notes series of D&D's Out of the Abyss adventure. Our intrepid party is still working their way through the Whorlstone Tunnels. I think we're finally getting close to the Whorlstone Tunnels, maybe even, and I'm hoping time-wise, one, because we've been in there for quite a while, sessions-wise, since we only play like 2.5 hours per session once a week at a game store. And two, there's a whole lot more to the Out of the Abyss, so I want to kind of move them on out of Gracklstugh and get them into other parts of the Underdark. So um, some notes I want to make sure to throw out before I forget. Last night, I'll talk a little bit about what they actually did. They explored another, I guess, major room in the Whorlstone Tunnels and are getting closer to wrapping the Whorlstone Tunnels. I'll give a little bit more detail about that here in a second. Some notes. Let's see. As a DM, I gave inspiration to a player for giving me pizza because I didn't eat before I got there. And he's like, "You want some pizza?" So I had some cold Pizza Hut pizza, which was great. Thank you, Ron, if you happen to be watching this. And if any of my players are watching this, shame on you because you might hear spoilers. But if you are watching it, thank you, Ron, for the pizza. And I gave him inspiration. And then one of the other players was like, "So what's your favorite kind of pizza?" So anyway, that was kind of fun. Um, I like to keep it 75% serious, 25% light and fun. You want to make sure to be having fun, and you got to lighten it up because the Underdark it can be pretty dreary, especially with all the madness and everything going on with Out of the Abyss. So what else? I had a light, or I had a player ask me, and this came. They were fighting some cave bears in Room 10 or Cavern 10 in the Whorlstone Tunnels, and they said, "Can I cast light to blind them?" And I really kind of thought, and I think they've done something similar before, or a player has done something similar before with some Darrow. And I was like, I really don't want to squash creativity, but at the same time, light is not really an offensive spell in any way whatsoever. I guess if you really made an amazing case, like if somebody had been in darkness for 20 years, hadn't seen any light at all, and all of a sudden you cast light in front of them, maybe. I said I don't want to squash creativity, but I'm going to rule no, that you can't. He wanted to kind of blind the cave bears with flashing light, and I said, the room they're in already has some illumination. They've got dark vision, and I'm just going to rule no. So, and he was cool with that. He's like, okay, I just wanted to ask. But, there may be another time where I ruled, yeah, that's okay. But, you know, light is just not really meant to fundamentally change the nature of a combat encounter. So, but that doesn't mean it could never be used that way. And it was a clever question. Finally, my player who has the so-called young elf, I think his elf character is like 40 something, and he's like, well, in elf terms, she's basically a teenager, an adolescent, and she's been raised by humans, so she does just crazy stuff, um, very rash things. He'll say, well, that's what my character would do. That's what my character would do. Well, we now have one of my players' wife has joined us, and we knew she was coming, but we had to wait for school to end so she could join us for a couple of months. And uh, she plays an older elf character, a female elf that has been in the party, being played by her husband for several weeks, knowing that she was coming, and now she's taken over, and she's literally grabbing the younger elf character by the ear and, what are you doing? No. And so I like that. I think that the party, role playing wise, is going to solve some of this rashness, which I love to see. I'd rather see it be done that way in a role playing manner than me having to step in or talk to the player and say, you're really messing up the whole dynamic of the whole thing. And sometimes the stuff they do is very interesting, but sometimes the stuff they do is just, what are you doing? They want to be in the middle of everything. They want to, I mean, they do, they attack dragons at second level. They walk into rooms with bad guys and say hello and kick off a fight and get killed, and I have to intervene and keep them alive, and just constantly stuff like that. And they say, well, that's what my character would do. Okay, well, that's fine. Well, now this other character, that's what they would do. So I'm really wanting to watch this roll out. And I mean, they're literally grabbing them by the ear and saying, "What are you doing?" Like for example, last night um, during the fight with the cave bears and the Darrow, there are two Darrow in Cavern 10 in the Whorlstone Tunnels. They cast sleep, and it didn't. It's like, well, I'll be fine. I'm immune because I'm an elf, and the other person's immune, but our monk isn't. It's a tiefling. The cave bear shrugged it off, and the tiefling, their melee character who's in there. You got a cleric, a wizard, and a monk, and they put the monk to sleep. So later it's like, what are you doing? Um, you know, and I think there was something else they were doing, like they were going to walk into the room, or there was something they were going to do, and she was like, "What are you doing?" So I really like that to see the role playing dynamic, and to see the group kind of say, "Hey, we need to kind of rein this in," because as a DM, really, I shouldn't directly step in and say you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. I don't want to make a player feel bad, but it does get to the point where you're like, why, why did you do that? So hopefully we'll see how this works out. And I have to say the player himself, I really like him. He knows the rules really well. He's a lot of fun. Um, he's the one that's always like throwing rules out and all that stuff, and that bothers some DMs. It doesn't bother me because it's usually more helpful than anything else. Occasionally he'd be like, "Well, this was supposed to happen," and I'll be like, "Well, as a DM, I'll make that call." But thanks for pointing that out. But I do like him a lot. And it's interesting to see the group kind of, especially now we have it's our only female player. We've had female players before, but now we have another female player, and she's older. I'm not going to guess how old she is, but so she's mature and wise in real life, and now she's playing her older elf character that way. So, um, on the like I said, timing wise, I'm going to try to get the the players out of the Whorlstone Tunnels in the next session or two. Really, the only major things left are to confront the cultists. They've pretty much done the Grey Ghost stuff, the Thieves Guild. They keep asking about the Thieves Guild and trying to pump the Darrow prisoner they have from the cult about the Thieves Guild, and Thieves Guild's like, we just don't mess with them, and they don't mess, or the Darrow's like, we don't mess with them, they don't mess with us. The characters don't know it, but they're basically done with the Thieves Guild by the time they did the alchemy lab and all that stuff, and they found the egg and all these other things. Um, so they've got to, if they want to, they can confront Naraka, who's the cult leader, and I think that's what they want to do because they're using their Darrow prisoner from last time, who was overseeing the zombies, to lead them around. And then if they could possibly encounter Bupito in his lair. I'm not going to push him that way, but it's possible. Then I'm going to try to get him out. And they took a long rest last night because after the fight with the Darrow and well, they're not polar bears, they're cave bears, but they use polar bear stats with dark vision. That's by the monster manual. Um, they they had to take a long rest. They got pretty beat up in that fight. So that kicked up the pursuit level to 6. So Ilvara and her crew are now officially there in Gracklstugh. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to use that when they get out of the Whorlstone Tunnels and back to the inn. I'm going to use that encounter as the impetus to get them out of Gracklstugh. So, because I really feel like it's time to move out of Gracklstugh. We've been in Gracklstugh for quite a while, and there's really nothing majorly central to the. There's a couple of things. They can get something from the Stone Giants, which I may try to send them back that way. There's an item they can get from the Stone Giants, and they know the cultists were trying to corrupt the Stone Giants now to bring madness to the city and chaos. So I may encourage them to visit the cave giant, or the cave Stone Giants, if they go visit Thimberchod, because it's kind of they're both southern Gracklstugh. But I want to move them on, so that I'd like within 2 or 3 sessions to get them wrapped up in the Whorlstone Tunnels, have the encounter with Ilvara, and get them out of Gracklstugh. I'd love for them to go to Sloopadoop, the Kuatoa city, because there's this amazing, great dramatic encounter with Demogorgon rising up, but we'll see. I don't want to force them to go that way. I have a feeling they'll go to Sloopadoop, or they'll go to Neverlight Grove. I have a feeling that's what'll happen. So let's see. Other than that, the fight, they basically, at the end of last session, they had killed in I think room 13 in the Whorlstone Tunnels, where the the Grimlock zombies were trying to climb up the cliff to get to him. They killed them. We ended there. They had beat up the Darrow overseer of the zombies and intimidated him to revealing what he knew about the cult. And we'd ended there. Now there were still 3 Grey Dwarf zombies kind of wandering around in the Fair's Rest in the 15 feet down in the pit. And the wizard, the young elf wizard, said, well, I'm just going to use some flame cantrip. I can't remember which one it is. I'm just going to keep pelting the zombies till they're dead. That's okay, you can do that. I'm not going to roll combat. They're just going to wander around, because they react to somebody coming down in there by the book. So I didn't even have them. They're just getting blasted and they died. Now, that's fine. I didn't give anybody experience points for that. But they avoided another fight if they wanted to. But yeah, you just sitting there picking off people who can't fight back, and there's no drama, there's no excitement, there's no risk. I didn't tell them that, but I just didn't give any experience points. Now, and I'm not in a punishing way. I'm going to mention it to them. I'm just not giving experience points for that because there was no risk, there was no excitement or drama. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you can sit here and pelt them and kill them. There's nothing wrong with that plan. So I had a couple of people go down into the pit and search kind of the mounds of offal, OFFAL, and fungus that are next to a narrow tunnel down in the pit. And they had a chance of finding a crawling hand thing that has a ring on it that's related to a subplot in Gracklstugh, or subquest, side quest that they didn't have. But they didn't find it. They searched one mound and did a very poor search, and then they didn't search the other mound. So it's okay, we leave. And so they didn't encounter the little hand. Other than that, not a lot going on. Daggers, the blind rogue, through both using inspiration, and because he gets a point of inspiration every night because he has the audacity to play a blind rogue or blind character, period. So he's at disadvantage in combats and other things. He through good rolling and all. I mean, he was on fire last night. He was tagging people. He was critting. He was throwing daggers, hitting bears, and I mean, he was doing great. So that was a great night for him combat wise. It's usually pretty much a disaster. The way I played the Darrow that they had forced the information out of at the end of last session through intimidation. They said, well, take us to Naraka, you're the main cult. And he's like, no, it's a fate worse than death. So they intimidated him again, rolled like an 18. The bard said something, really nasty and with a knife. And he's like, okay, when do you want to go? So they were taking the Darrow, and he was leading them, and he was giving them accurate information, but he's also kind of crazy, and he's also like not their friend. So he's like, well, if you go that way, you can go to the main cult area with Naraka. If you go that way, we have like prisoners and stuff. And what I did was I goofed up because I hadn't refreshed on that room before last night. I usually try to study up again like at lunchtime, but I didn't get a chance to yesterday, and it just said cultist pens, something I know there's prisoners in there, and there's bears that they use a ritual in that room to tame the bears, the cave bears. I was like, ooh. So they were like, oh, let's go free the prisoners. They got in there, and so it turns out, it's a big fight with the bears, and they were trying to stealth, and they failed their stealth, so the bears jumped out, and it was a big nasty fight. And they won, but those cave bears, which are basically polar bears, hit hard. And they have a lot of hit points, and they're only CR2, so it was a bit of a fight. But he was like, so afterwards they noticed that he's behind this gag, he's laughing, and they pull his gag down. He's like, see, yay, prisoners! I didn't tell you what kind of prisoners did it, because it was bears, right? And he's like, and because Daryl were crazy, right? So. And they didn't kill him, and there was a little bit of a discussion at the beginning of session, do we kill him? And basically everybody in the party is some flavor of good, or maybe like a neutral thrown in somewhere. And, killing him, just to kill him, was out of the question. They considered throwing him down in with the zombies. Again, they didn't do that after discussion, which I'm glad, considering all their alignments. So overall, it was a good session. It was a lot of fun. It was a good fight, good mix of role-playing and fighting. At the point, they decided on their own. I would have gone a little further, but at this point, and I did roll after their long rest for an encounter, and they didn't have a random encounter. But they decided, they were like, okay, let's finish here. So they stopped in room 10, and I feel like they're going to use the Darrow to lead them, their prisoner to lead them to the main cultist. But they can go, there's another exit, they're in room 10, and if they go west, they kind of head back and backtrack ways they've already come, and if they go east, he'll kind of lead them to the main cultist area, which is where I have a feeling where they're going to go. So anyway, very cool, enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments or opinions on what I shared, I'd love to have them. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to make sure to like the channel, follow the channel, give me a subscription, that helps a lot. Like the video, that helps tremendously. And I thank you so much, and I will catch you next time on the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series. Thanks.